Welcome to Unit 2, the external environment. We'll be looking at opportunities, threats, industry competition, and competitor analysis. The external environment consists of the industry environment that business operate in. Then beneath that we have the competitor environment. Outside of the industry and the competitor environment is the general environment that all businesses operate in. It consists of the socio-cultural, economic, political, legal, technological, global, and demographic. And we will look at these different areas individually. So, in order for firms to understand the business that they're operating or the environment they're operating in, then they have to perform what we call a environmental analysis. And this is to identify the potential influence of particular aspects of the general industry and competitor environments on business operations. So you have to do an analysis of the general environment, an analysis of the industry that you're operating in, and an analysis of your direct competitors. In that way, now you can craft your strategic intent, your strategic mission, and basically devise a plan of how you are going to deal with the different elements in the different environments. So for example, a company may consider the impact of operating in a communist country and the threats posed by government-controlled resources. So that is looking at the external environment. The external environment analysis now is really a set of processes that a firm will use to first scan, then monitor, then forecast, then assess what is happening in the environment around them that they operate in. So scanning is where you identify early signals of environmental changes and trends. What is happening? How are things changing? Then the other step is to monitor, detecting meaning through ongoing observations of environmental changes and threats. What does this change mean? How is it going to affect the business? Then we are going to forecast, develop projections of anticipated outcomes based on monitor the changes and trends. And finally, there is assessing, where you determine the timing and importance of environmental changes and trends for firm strategies and their management. So we are back to looking at the individual elements in the general environment. The sociocultural. This is society's attitudes and cultural values, which are the cornerstone of a society. So these things may be women in the workplace, workplace diversity, attitudes about quality of life, concerns about environment, shifts in work and career perspectives, shifts in product and service references. So a firm always have to be monitoring what is happening out in the environment that they're operating in terms of the culture of the people, their employees, and that kind of thing. Then we have the economic segment, nature and direction of the economy in which a firm competes. Firms seek to compete in relatively stable economies with strong growth potential. But the firm now has to look at inflation rates, interest rates, trade deficits or surpluses, budget deficits or surpluses, personal savings rates, business savings rate, gross domestic product, because the firm needs to know if they will be earning above average returns if they're operating in this particular market or region, and if persons have the capacity to purchase the goods or services that they're offering, and whether people really have personal savings, and are the inflation rates high or interest rates high if the firm want to get a loan. So all of these things would fall under the economic segment. Then there is the political legal segment, and this is the body of laws and regulations guiding interactions among nations as well as firms and various local government agencies. Antitrust laws, taxation, deregulation philosophies, labor training laws, education philosophies and policies. A firm needs to look at all these things and see how they will either negatively or positively affect the firm. Technological segment. Now this is where institutions and activities involved in creating new knowledge into outputs, products, processes and materials. So this relates to product innovations, applications of knowledge, focus of private and government supported research and development expenditures, new communication technologies. And we know that technology moves at a very fast pace, so a firm may be using a particular technology for a short period of time, say 3 years, and then it becomes outdated. Also, in terms of the product that they're offering, they need to invest a lot of research and development dollars to make sure that they are keeping up with new technology and can offer good products to their consumers. The global segment now are just global markets, and global markets are changing. So we have important political events that might change global markets. Then we have critical global markets like China, for instance, that does a lot of production for the world consumer goods. Newly industrialized countries like maybe Vietnam or some of those Asian countries that are really in this era just becoming industrialized. Different cultural and institutional attributes is what makes up the global segment. The demographic segment now speaks to population, age structure, geographic distribution, ethnic mix, income distribution, because as a firm you want to know who are the persons that you are marketing your product and service to, and how these things will affect whether or not you are able to earn above average returns. Then there's an additional one that was not on the graphic representation we saw before, and it is the physical environment. Potential and actual changes in the physical environment and business practices that are intended to positively respond to and deal with these changes. So we have climate change, which has been a big topic in the last number of years. Sustainable development, what is the impact of your product on the ecosystem, and how are you reducing waste? So the physical environment is also very important. We will turn now and look at the industry environment. So just now we were looking at the general environment, which included the socio-cultural, technological, legal, economic, etc. We're now going to look at the industry that a firm operates in. And the industry is a group of companies offering products or services that are close substitutes for each other. So the examples of an industry may include the soft drinks industry, the mobile phone industry, the sportswear industry. A set of factors that directly influences a company and its competitive actions and responses. The industry environment is also about interaction among these factors to determine an industry's profit potential. And to determine the industry's profit potential, we will look at Porter's 5 forces of competition. The Porter's 5 forces model consists of threat of new entrants, the bargaining power of suppliers, the bargaining power of buyers, the threat of substitute products, rivalry among competing firms. Now, the results of the Porter's 5 forces analysis tells us if the industry is attractive. So how likely it is that the industry will be profitable in the long term. We will now look at each element of the 5 forces individually. Threat of new entrants. Threat of new entrants measures the difficulty for newcomers to enter the industry. Now, for newcomers to enter the industry, now they have to look at what are the barriers to entry. First barrier to entry is economies of scale. Economies of scale is the more you produce, then the less the cost for a single item. Will a new company be able to come in and achieve economies of scale? They will have to also look at product differentiation. How unique is their product? What are they offering that is different? Capital requirements. How much money will they need to start up the business or put out this new product? Switching costs, that relates to how much money will it cost for the customer to switch from the product that they were using before to this new product that the new company will bring. Do they have access to distribution channels? What are the cost disadvantages independent of scale? What government policy will they have to deal with? And what are the expected retaliation? The retaliation means that if I go into a new market at a very low price, I can expect that the persons that were operating in the industry before are going to reduce their prices, and that may affect me negatively. So there are some industries that have high barriers to entry and some that have low barriers to entry. So a company must analyze the threat of new entrants into whatever industry they are operating in. Then we have the bargaining power of suppliers, and this measures how much a supplier of materials is able to restrict the company's business strategy. Suppliers are powerful when it is dominated by a few large companies. Satisfactory substitute products are not available to industry firms. Industry firms are not significant customer for the supplier group, and suppliers' goods are critical to buyers' marketplace success. Also, effectiveness of supplier products has created high switching costs. So in a nutshell, what this is saying, if there are only a few suppliers of the raw materials that you need to produce your product, then they have a lot of power over you, and you may very well have to deal with high prices and that kind of a thing. So you have to look at how a supplier can take advantage of you or not. Then there is the bargaining power of buyers, and this measures how much power consumers have in determining the prevailing price in a market. Buyers or customers are powerful when they purchase a large portion of an industry's total output. The sales of the product being purchased account for a significant portion of the seller's annual revenues. They could easily switch to another product. The industry's products are undifferentiated or standardized, and buyers pose a credible threat if they were to integrate backward into the seller's industry. Now, customers, as we know, have power because then they can decide just not to buy your product. And out of fear of them switching to another product, then you are going to comply and reduce your prices. So for any product or service that you sell, buyers are very powerful. Then there is the threat of substitute products. This measures the chances that competing goods of a similar nature will threaten a company's offerings. It is more likely to occur when switching costs are low or when substitutes offer superior price to performance characteristics. Product substitutes are strong threats when customers face few switching costs. It does not cost the customer much to switch to another product. Substitute products' price is lower. Substitute products' quality and performance capabilities are equal to or greater than those of the competing product. The intensity of rivalry now, it measures the level of concentration of rivals, your direct competitors. The intensity of rivalry is stronger when competitors are numerous or equally balanced, experience slow industry growth, have high fixed costs or high storage costs, lack differentiation or low switching cost, experience high strategic stakes, and have high exit barriers. We'll talk about exit barriers soon. So if you are operating, or if your firm is operating in an industry where there's just a lot of firms and this growth of the industry is slow, you have high cost and your product not different from anybody else's product. So it's easy for customers to switch. Then there can be intensity of rivalry and price wars and that kind of thing. And also it may be very costly to exit this particular industry. So high exit barriers now relate to companies may sometimes want to leave a particular industry, but they are shackled by high exit barriers. It may cost more to leave the industry than to remain in it. Common exit barriers include specialized assets. It means that whatever production machinery you have, etc., it is very hard for you to resell it then. So asset with values linked to a particular business or location. Fixed cost of exit, such as labor agreements. You may have to be paying redundancy packages, exit packages, that kind of thing that can be very, very costly for a firm. Strategic interrelationships, that is relationships of mutual dependence between one business and other parts of a company's operations, such as shared facilities and access to financial markets, may stop you from exiting an industry. Then there are, of course, emotional barriers, career concerns, loyalty to employees, because there are a lot of businesses that would like to close, but they are so attached to really keeping their employees functioning or being able to survive, that it is difficult for them to exit the business. So that is taken into consideration as well. And then there is government and social restrictions that, you can't just get up and close a business like that. We will now look at the competitor environment. So we were looking at the industry environment just now. Before that, we looked at the general, then we looked at the industry, then we're looking at the competitor environment. This is where you are identifying and evaluating your competitors. You're looking at their strengths and their weaknesses and how they compare to your business. This information should then be used to improve your company's efforts and to take advantage of whatever you find in the analysis. So competitor intelligence is the ethical gathering of needed information and data about competitors' objectives, strategies, assumptions, and capabilities. You want to know what drives the competitor as shown by its future objectives. You also want to know what the competitor is doing and can do as revealed by its current strategy. What the competitor believes about itself and the industry as shown by its assumptions, and what the competitor may be able to do as shown by its capabilities. So basically you will have to observe what your competitors are doing and do an in-depth analysis to see how you can respond to what they are doing. So having looked at the competitor environment, the firm will have to do their own competitor analysis. They will have to look at their own future objectives. How do your goals compare with your competitors' goals? Where will the emphasis be placed in the future? And what is the firm's attitude towards risk? The firm will also look at their current strategy. How are we currently competing? Does this strategy support changes in the competitive environment? We need to ask those questions of the firm. Then, firm have to look at their own assumptions. How do we assume the future to be volatile? We mean changes in the environment. Are we operating under a status quo? And what assumptions do our competitors hold about the industry and themselves? Finally, we have to look at our capabilities as a firm. What are our strengths and weaknesses? How do we rate compared to our competitors? And thereafter, we can craft our response. How are we going to respond to these things? How are we going to make sure that our future objectives, current strategy, our assumptions and capabilities are in keeping with effectively competing with others in the industry? So the response will be, what will our competitors do in the future? Where do we hold an advantage over our competitors? And how will this change our relationship with competitors? And that is the competitor analysis. So to summarize the external environment, we looked at the general environment, which includes the socio-cultural, economic, demographic, political, legal, technological, global, and physical environments. Then we looked at the industry environment. In particular, we looked at the Porter's 5 forces of competition, threat of new entrants, power of suppliers, power of buyers, product substitutes, and intensity of rivalry. Then finally, we looked at the competitor environment, future objectives, current strategy, assumptions, and capabilities that the company must examine in order to understand what is the competitive environment that they are operating in. So, what you need to do now is to read Chapter 2 in the textbook. The link is on the Moodle course page. You need to download and complete the tutorial sheet also on the Moodle course page. And of course, you will attend your tutorial at whatever time you have your tutorial to answer questions and contribute to discussions. And that is it for Unit 2.